All right. Good evening, everybody. Right. This is being recorded, so we should be able to offer it out for anyone who's not able to make it tonight for any reason, or if you want to watch any parts again. So bear with us. I think everyone has already, but yeah, feel free to turn your microphones off. If you do have any questions at any point, you should be able to see a Q&A button somewhere on your screen towards the top. There's a chat one and a Q&A one. If you have any questions, please, if possible, you can put them in the Q&A one. Otherwise, the chat makes a little like kind of bleep on my screen every time. And as I'm sharing, there'll be a lot of bleeps to get through. Grand. Right, so we've got 37. We'll get started in about 1 minute, just give people a last chance to, the late flurry. And then we'll get started. So if we start, clock in my corner says 1802. So it says 1801, get started at 1802. So I'm Mr. Elson, and you can see Miss Bamborough over here.
And I am Mrs. Bamborough, so we'll get started in a minute. Just give people a chance to join. As Mr. Elson said, if you've got any questions, if you can just pop them in the Q&A and we will get to them at the end.
Lovely. I'm assuming, by the way, that everyone can hear and see us. So if you can see our mouths wiggling about, but there's no sound, to be honest, at the moment you can. Oh, there we go. I love the thumbs up. That's nice. If anyone's having any issues with that, just stick it in the chat and let us know. But hopefully it's all working. You can do chat for that one. All right. That's a good sign. Right, Miss Bamborough, over to you.
We are going to get started. So welcome everyone and thank you for joining us tonight. We've been talking to the students quite a lot since mocks about the UCAS applications, apprenticeship ideas, gap year, and what their future plans are. And what tonight is really about is letting parents and carers and guardians know all of that information as well, because we don't know how much the students actually tell you at home being teenagers. So can I just also make it clear that this is solely a session on UCAS. There will be a separate parents information meeting in September, which will take you through all the other aspects of the year 13's journey. Tonight is just about post 18, so universities, apprenticeships and gap years. So predominantly tonight is going to be about UCAS. Whether or not your son or daughter is looking at going to uni, we do ask them to complete the first stages of their UCAS application. Now, the reason for that is that we do see a lot of students changing their minds in year 13 and deciding that they do want to go to uni, and we just need to make sure that the basics of their UCAS applications are done so that we can then process that application, because it is quite a time-consuming process. The other reason we ask you to do it is that even if your child does not want to go to uni next year and they intend to take a gap year, often it's quite handy if they are aware of what the application process is, because once they leave us at the end of year 13, if they want to apply to uni, they obviously don't have the face-to-face contact with us that they do in year 13. So it's good that they are familiar and they sort of know how to get started on that. There is a really, really important document that we posted on Teams and we also sent out to you via email. It is our future plans document. It's quite a long document. It's quite a complex document, but it does give you absolutely all of the information you need, whether your child wants to go to university in the UK or abroad, if they want to take a gap year, if they want to take an apprenticeship. There's lots of guidance on student finance and through the application process. So we do encourage you to have a look at that. It is on Teams, so the students can access it, and it has been sent out by email, so you should be able to access it. So please, please do take the time to have a look through that document, because it is very, very beneficial. So what we started with the students on the 12th of June is their UCAS application. And by this Friday, really, I know they're on work experience this week, but by this Friday, we would ask them to have completed the first 11 sections of their application. So that is from personal details right through to education, diversity and inclusion, right through to extra activities. Don't worry at the minute too much about personal statements and choices. We are aware that many of you will be spending a few days in your summer going to open days and starting your personal statement. That doesn't need to be finished just at this moment. Early apps will obviously follow slightly quicker timetable because they've got an earlier deadline, but the first 11 sections are the priority at the minute, and then choices, personal statement will come after that. Students did have a personal statement session from the University of Durham last Thursday, and that is posted on Teams as well, and that directs you to how to structure a personal statement. There's a little bit of new guidance for this year, which I will talk about a little bit later. So most of your students have already done this. I have had to remind a few students to do it today. So if you just, again, push it home to make sure they have got their UCAS application started, they need to use their personal email address. The reason for this is that when they get the results and they are no longer a Marling student, their school email address will become null and void. So if they can use their personal email address, that is how universities will contact them. They will need to link their application to Marling. So each school has got a buzzword so that we can see your child's application. The buzzword for us for this year is Marling 26. So once they see that, they choose their tutor group, and then we at the school can see their application at our side. They will be selecting undergraduate study, and if you just make sure you are saving your progress, every section needs to be saved or else you will lose your information. Quite an intensive deadline in terms of dates that we are working to. So first 11 sections by this week, ideally. If not, they have got over the summer to work on that. 15th of September, that is our internal deadline for our early apps. Now, please remember that when you click pay and send, that does not send your application to UCAS. That just sends it to us as a school. A lot of students panic when they press the pay and send button and think that it's gone and they can't control it anymore. It just comes to us at the school, and that then gives us a few weeks after the 15th of September to really look at those applications, check the personal statements, check that all the information is correct, because once it is sent to UCAS, it's very difficult to change any of those details, and also give students a chance to have a look at their references and add any necessary bits before their UCAS is finally sent off. So the first big deadline, and Mr. Elson will talk in more detail about this, is the 15th of October. So that is our Oxbridge candidates and anyone going for medicine, dentistry or veterinary medicine. The next deadline for the majority of students who are not going for Oxbridge, dentistry, medicine and veterinary science is the 24th of October. So just for the October half term. Now that is a deadline. Again, it's an internal one, so we just have the application at school. That will ensure that your application is sent before Christmas. Some students might not want it to be sent before Christmas, and that's absolutely fine, but others are quite keen to get it sent because as soon as you've sent your application, you can start to get interviews, you can start to get offers. That is often quite a motivational factor, especially going into mocks in November and going into mocks in February. They like to have some offers because that just gives them that extra sense of motivation and what they're working towards, what their goal is, what their main aim is. Students who have not had their application sent by Christmas will be working to the 24th of November deadline. That is when we absolutely need to have your UCAS as complete as possible, because we then need to process all those. We've obviously got the 2-week Christmas break. We need to have those applications processed, ready to send on the 14th of January. So we've really only got about a week and a half after Christmas. So please encourage your son or daughter to stick to those deadlines, and that enables us as a staff body to get their applications processed as quickly and efficiently as possible. A little bit about the content that they will be required to fill in on their application. Content and residency. We do require them to nominate a parent or carer that will be able to discuss their application on the student's behalf if they're not available. So if they're on holiday, if their battery runs out, if they've got no signal, they will only contact the person that has been nominated to discuss their application. So we usually ask that that's a parent or carer. Finance, a lot of students don't know what to put for finance. Unless you are paying privately and have the funds in the bank to pay the £9,000 fees a year, the code will be 02. So it's generally the second option down on the finance section, and then you need to add the county that you live. So for most of our students, that will be Gloucestershire or Wiltshire. So they will be selecting 02, which is student finance. For the education section, they may need their GCSE certificates just to remind them of the grades they got, of the exam board. They do need to add all of their qualifications. That does include any that they got a U in. So they do have to add absolutely all qualifications, any AS levels they're taking, if they're doing core maths, if they're doing creative writing, or if they've taken an EPQ. And they will mark those grades. GCSEs, they will be able to enter the grade that they got. For A levels, they will mark the grade as pending. So they will put the date as either June 2026 or August 2026, and they will mark that as pending. Their tutors will then input their predicted grades. Employment, if they've had any jobs, they can add details for up to 5 of those. Extra activities, a lot of students don't have anything for this, but it's really if they've been part of an access scheme, a university summer school, if they've done any particular academic courses. But don't worry if you don't have anything for that, because many students don't. It's a really, really good idea, particularly in the summer term and over the summer holidays, to start to visit some universities. That will help students decide if they want to be close to home, if they want to be further away, if they want a smaller uni, a city uni, a campus uni, and it really helps them make those decisions. At the minute, their head is probably exploding with the amount of information that we are giving them, and often going out to those universities and having those open days gives them a little bit of clarity as to what they want and what they don't want. The best website to look at open days on is opendays.com. So they have got a calendar that tells you all the open days that are going on. You can also search for individual unis if you know where you would like to go. A lot of students, if they cannot go to physical face-to-face open days, open days often offers some virtual tours of universities. Don't worry too much about choices at the minute, but students will be adding 5 choices. It does not matter what order they add those choices in. Universities will not have any idea what their first choice is and what their second choice is. They will just know that the student has applied to their particular institution. If students are planning to take a gap year, they can select deferred entry. However, it's a really good idea to check that the university is happy to accept deferred entry, because from year to year there's often changes with the course, and just make sure that the course is running and that there's no changes to it before you would select deferred entry. A lot of students will apply for 2026 entry and then decide that they want to take a gap year. That's absolutely fine, but it will be just a chat to the university to check that they are happy to then defer your application.
Could I just jump in for a moment there as well? There was a question in the Q&A about whether people who apply for early applications can then apply to other universities after the early application point. The answer to that is yes. Remembering the maximum number of universities you can apply to is 5. There's a few things you can adjust on the UCAS application. Actually, once it's fully sent to UCAS, that is one of them. There's very few things that can be adjusted. So you can add additional universities after the early deadline. However, you can also apply to all 5 with the early deadline. And again, none of the universities know which other universities are being applied for. So, they might take a guess that you're applying for Oxbridge, but they won't know for sure. So it's absolutely fine to kind of apply for all 5 together, or to potentially wait a little bit later.
All right, thank you. So next section is personal statement. Now, often this causes a real sense of stress among students, because trying to write a page about all the reasons that you're fabulous and fantastic and all the good things about you can be really difficult, especially when you're starting with a blank canvas. So please do start to think about it now. Jot down all the things that you've done, because you've all done so many fabulous things, whether it's music, whether it's sport. Consider all the things that you've done for your Marling Diamond, your part-time jobs, any volunteering, any mentoring you've done. Just find a space to log all those things that you've done, because that will help you to formulate your personal statement. Please sort of try to make a start on this over the summer. Doesn't need to be a final complete version. You will have plenty of support in school in terms of myself, Mr. Elson, the sixth form team, your form tutor, your subject teachers, to have a look at that personal statement and get it absolutely perfect before you submit it. So the earlier you can draft it, the more feedback you can get, and the more you can sort of perfect it so that it's ready to go. We have had some changes to personal statements this year. It's nothing major, but they have just divided it into 3 main sections. So section 1, why do you want to study this course or subject? So what's your motivation? Why are you passionate about it? It's generally good not to use phrases like I've always wanted to, or I've always been passionate, but what is the key thing that has really made you want to do this subject or this topic? Section 2, it's about your qualifications and your studies. So your A-level subjects, why have you chosen them? How can they make you an ideal candidate for what you want to go on to? So all the things that you've done in school, all those qualifications, all those certificates that you've had. And section 3, what have you done outside of school? Have you done any volunteering? Are you part of a sports club? Do you have a part-time job? How do all those skills make you a candidate that they would really, really want at their institution? So we've got, why do you want to study? Everything inside school for section 2, and anything outside school or anything extra for section 3. You can use Unifrog to draft your personal statement. So the sections that you will be using on Unifrog, there is a personal statement section. It is formulated so that you can draft your personal statement into those 3 sections already. So it's a really, really useful tool. Subject references, your teachers at the minute are writing your subject references. So you will have a reference from each of your subjects, and your tutor will then put those together into your final reference. What we have asked students to do is the section at the bottom, which is called Notes for Reference Writers. So that is your chance to write anything that you think your teachers might not know about you. So if you're a chemistry student, for example, is there anything you do outside school that shows your interest in chemistry that your teacher might not know about? And we can add that to your reference to personalize it a little bit. Are there any hobbies you've got? Are there any interests that you've got? Do you subscribe to a particular app or a particular magazine that sort of extends your knowledge of a particular subject? And that's your chance to write in there so that we can really, really personalize your reference and make it unique to you. Tutor references, as I said, tutors and teachers are writing those at the minute. There are 3 main sections that we will write about. So generally there is a statement about Marling Grammar School. Most students will choose 3 A levels and a breadth option. The second part is for any extenuating circumstances. So that is if there's been a death, if there's been anything sort of majorly traumatic that's happened in the family that we might need to be aware of, that we would like universities to take into consideration before they process your application and decide to make you an offer. And then the bottom section will be your main reference. We will give you a chance to look at that and see it and check you're happy with it before we click the final send button on your application. Predicted grades. These always make students feel a little bit nervous. Your predicted grade is what your teachers, it has to be aspirational. It's what your teachers feel that you are capable of getting on the best day with the right questions and a really lovely paper in front of you. What is the absolute best we feel you can achieve? UCAS advises us, and we do get judged on the accuracy of our predicted grades. So they do need to be aspirational, but also achievable. So we need to make sure that they are motivational. We are thinking about the best case scenario, but we need to be realistic at the same time. They need to be determined by professional judgment. So we need to have evidence. If we are going to predict you an A or an A star, we need to have evidence that your mocks, your end of topic tests have proved that you are capable of those grades. And it needs to be data driven. So again, looking at GCSE grades, looking at performance in tests. We cannot be affected by students, parents, guardians, or carers. As I said, it's really, really dangerous for us to inflate predicted grades, because the predicted grade will just get you the offer. You still need to be able to achieve that grade to get into the university. So if you are a C grade student and you ask us to predict you an A or an A star, you still need to achieve that A or an A star. So it would be unfair of us to predict you something that you may not be able to achieve, because then on results day, you may get rejected from that particular institution. It cannot be influenced by entry requirements. So a lot of students will come to us and they will say, this particular uni needs 3 A's, so I need you to predict me 3 A's. We need to look at what you can achieve, what you're capable of achieving, and look at the evidence that we've got. When students have completed all of their 5 sections, they will pay the fee, which is £28.95. That is for all 5 of your applications. When you click the send button on that, it does not send it to UCAS, it just sends it to us at the school. It does mean that you will no longer be able to make changes. So please make sure that you have looked at your application with your tutor before you click that send button, because after that we would need to send it back to you if there were any changes that need made, and it's quite a time-consuming process. So please make sure that it is as perfect as it can be before you send it to us. There is a waiver this year for students that are eligible for free school meals. So if that does apply to any of you, when you start your application, there is an option to pop that in a box. And then the waiver, the fee is waived for you. Your tutor will be your first port of call in terms of making sure that your application is complete. So when you feel it is ready, you will book in with your tutor, have a look through your application with them, and then they will advise you to see one of the sixth form team. So you will be given a UCAS advisor. So that will either be Mr. Elson, myself, Miss Harris, Miss Rogers, your head of year, or Miss Phillips, who will be head of year 12 next year. And they will be the final people that will book an appointment with you and send your final application. Once you have sent it, you will receive an acknowledgement from UCAS that they've received your application, and they will send it to the 5 universities that you have chosen. After that process has happened, you will start to receive offers. Some universities send offers quicker than other universities. Some will start giving offers within a few days. For others, it's a slightly longer process. They will either make you an offer. It can be a conditional offer where they say, we will accept you, but we need you to have 3 A's, 2 A's and a B, something like that. In some cases, they will make you an unconditional offer, and that means we will take you no matter what grades you get. In other instances, they will invite you to interview. So if you are applying for Oxford, Cambridge, medicine, dentistry, veterinary medicine, please expect to have an interview. Mr. Elson and myself can give you a mock interview. We also have quite an extensive links to other schools and doctors, vets who can come into school and provide mock interviews for you. It's really, really important that you have that practice and you are well rehearsed before your application, and we are more than happy to help you with that. So do not be afraid to come and ask us for a mock interview. We can also send you some questions, give you some advice. Once you've received all your decisions, you will have to narrow it down to 2 choices. You will have to accept one as your firm choice, and that is the university that you would like to go to. And you need to keep one as your insurance or your backup option. We do advise that your insurance requires lower grades than your firm choice. So if your firm choice asks for 3 A's, perhaps your insurance could ask for 2 A's and a B, something like that. You will have to reject all of your other offers. If you get the grades to go to your firm choice, that is the university you will go to. you cannot decide that you want to go to your insurance. So please think really, really carefully about what you want to put as your firm choice, because that will be the university that you go to. If you receive all your offers and something changes, you can reject all of them, but that will put you straight into clearing. So you will have no offers and you will be reliant on finding a course at the university that you want to go to. So again, please do think carefully before you reject all your offers, because that will put you into the clearing process. Student finance, don't worry about this right now. Applications don't open until February or March 2026. But we will give sessions in school about student finance, but the school itself has got no involvement. Student finance is about you filling in your application form, and it is means tested. So we will need to get parents, carers, jobs, what their salaries are, and that will determine how much you get for your student loan. It's a good idea when it opens just to get logged into the student finance website. We will give more information about this nearer the time, but if you just familiarize yourself with the student finance website, which is on the gov.uk page. Do apply early. The earlier you apply for student finance, the earlier your application can be processed and the earlier your money can be given to you. And we don't want to have any students starting uni without their student loan, because there are a lot of very important things that they will need to do in those first few weeks, like Freshers Week, accommodation, all those sorts of things. So please do sort of try to do your application as quickly as possible. Don't want to ignore that uni is absolutely not the only option for our students. We are seeing a major increase in the amount of students that are looking to go on to do apprenticeships, predominantly degree apprenticeships. There are a lot of really, really useful websites out there, and I would encourage you, if you're thinking about apprenticeships, particularly in industries like finance, engineering, business, those are the sort of industries and sectors that we would see most adverts for apprenticeships on. They can look on the UCAS website. There is a separate section for apprenticeships. Unifrog, which is where they will be doing their personal statements, have also got a section for apprenticeships. And there's some really useful websites like the government website. There's one called Rate My Apprenticeship. The best one I found, and this is what I will direct most of my students to, is a website called Amazing Apprenticeships. Now they have got a higher and degree listing, so all of the vacancies are advertised on this website. So I will often at 2 points in the year, October and again in February, I will receive a list of about 46 pages of apprenticeships, and there's links to where those are, what the wages are, and a link as to how to apply. It's slightly different to the UCAS process. Students will have to apply separately for each apprenticeship. So if they see one that they'd like to go for, it's a separate application for each one, much like a job application. If your son or daughter is thinking about an apprenticeship, I would really encourage them to have a CV drafted, ready to go. I have got a CV template that I can give students. There is one on Teams already, and I am more than happy to look at the CV they currently have and work with them to sort of update it and make it as good as it can be, ready to apply for those apprenticeships. The other reason we would say to write a personal statement and start the UCAS process is that if they've got a personal statement template, we can also turn that into a cover letter. A lot of apprenticeships will ask for a cover letter in terms of why the student wants to apply for that particular apprenticeship. So it's a good idea to have sort of a list of those skills ready to go that we can put into a letter format if they want to apply for an apprenticeship. Teams is also a really good place to look for opportunities. So often companies will email me and I will post those opportunities on Teams, but please do look on the websites listed as well. Students often have a lot of questions about the different levels of apprenticeships. So level 3 is what students are currently doing. Level 3 is equivalent to A levels. Level 4, I would say, is equivalent to the first year of university. Level 5 would be second year of university, and a level 6 apprenticeship, what we call a degree apprenticeship, will be the full university degree that gets you that qualification. Some of our students go for level 7. That will get them a master's. So they've got the degree and then they do the extra year and that gets them the master's. We are seeing so many companies start to advertise apprenticeships. It is becoming a much more popular route for many students, with not having any debt when they leave school, but still leaving with a degree. So it does fit, it does tick a lot of boxes for our students. During National Apprenticeship Week, which is generally in February, we will get some of our links in to speak to students about that. We've got links with engineering companies in Gloucestershire. We've got links with Renishaw, Atkins. A lot of the companies that take our students for work experience will offer apprenticeships as well. So there are lots of companies out there that are starting to offer apprenticeships. Gap year is another option. Students can access a list of useful websites if they're planning a gap year. We have got advice about websites that they can use to look at hostels. There's websites where students can sort of track where they're going. We've had students in the past go to Germany, go to Spain to be an au pair. We've had students that have traveled all around Europe. Some go further afield and do some kind of volunteering. So there's lots of websites. Again, these are available on Teams, but I will post them again after tonight just to allow you to familiarize yourself with them. But there are lots of different options if your son or daughter does not want to go to university.
Just to jump in on that one as well, sorry, Mum. In terms of gap years, especially for those people thinking early applications, maybe having a gap year first, absolutely fine, but the universities will want to know what you did on the gap year to support the course. So if you're thinking about kind of going off and having a great traveling time, you might want to think about if that's something you actually include. And if you then mention in advance of your application that you're thinking about going for a gap year, if it's kind of a constructive academic gap year, like get some, experience maybe in a hospital, dentistry, veterinary surgery, that'd be absolutely fine. You can talk about experiences and skills you've gained as a result of doing that gap year. If it's to go and see the world, let your hair down a bit, maybe it'd be a case of like applying, and then when you're offered a position or a place, you can then say, fantastic, I accept this, but I'm going to defer for a year. So it's just basically kind of showing that you're actively supporting your application at the academic level.
Just to finish off on my side, there is always somebody that you can talk to. Students see their tutor every day. We've got the sixth form team, so myself, Mr. Elson, Miss Rogers, Miss Harris, all in the Downfield reception area. And again, if anyone would like any further information about things like apprenticeships or gap years, not knowing what to do, not knowing what subjects to choose, then please do come and speak to me. And even if it's a mock interview, anything like that, please do come and speak to us, and we can help you with that. So I cannot see any questions at the minute because I've got a problem at my side. I'm hoping Mr. Elson will be able to see any questions at his side.
Grant,
And then I will pass over to him for a bit of an early apps chat.
Right. There's been a smattering of questions and comments into the Q&A, so I've been kind of frantically typing every now and again, remembering, oh, I should probably put this on mute whilst I do it. So the ones I'm just replying to at the moment is it fine to apply to sub-university courses at the same time? Yeah, so a few people have kind of asked me this, and I get asked this question a lot, which is, yes, it's fine. You don't have to apply for, say, like, English for all 5 universities. It can be something like, like maths for one university and psychology for another. However, it's not necessarily something we'd recommend. You only get one application and you just send it to the different universities. They get the exact same personal statement. And once the application is gone to universities, you cannot change the personal statement. That's one of the things that cannot be changed. So if it's for different courses which are similar, say, I don't know, like physics and maybe engineering, there's a lot of crossover, so you can kind of focus on the things you've done to support both aspects, maybe common skills. That's a good kind of way to consider doing 2 different courses. If the courses are completely separate, say, like, I don't know, dentistry and maybe criminology, for instance, you'd have to kind of show what you've done to support each side, and that therefore means potentially kind of splitting your personal statement to, half its component parts and having like 2 separate ones. Kind of, it wouldn't be necessarily 50-50, but a case of I've done these skills which apply to this one and these skills which apply to this one. So frankly, the recommendation is have a really good think about which course of the 2 you'd like to do, because then it's easier to construct like a full length personal statement really supporting that choice. You can still kind of apply for different courses and they can still be successful. It just makes it more tricky in some cases because you'll have to put more emphasis in a smaller space of time, if that makes sense.
Had another question: is there a chance that all 5 unis choices are declined, rejected? There is a chance. It's why we would advise you to think really carefully about which unis you're applying to and which grades they want. So in an ideal world, you will be applying for 5 unis that are asking for the grades that you've been predicted. We would be having quite a serious chat with you if you wanted to go to 5 universities that were asking for grades that were completely out of reach. Ultimately, it is your decision. Some students decide to go maybe for 3 universities that have grades that are beyond what their predicted grades are, and 2 that are slightly more realistic. But that is something that we would chat to parents about and chat to students about before processing their application. So in very, very rare cases, yes, you can get rejected for all 5, but we would be working with you to look at unis and look at courses that are realistic, that will ensure that you have got the best chance of getting an offer that you possibly can.
That links as well to a question in the Q&A about, if it does happen, how does clearing work? So there's 2 stages. Let's say, worst case scenario, all 5 university choices reject, and it's the worst, it's horrible. The options then, you could go through something called UCAS Extra, and UCAS Extra basically allows you to kind of make one more choice, like course choice. It might be a little bit more focused, but there's that kind of last chance saloon to kind of see what's out there. So if that is still unsuccessful, so you've got one more chance to kind of say, look, these, this is what I'm hoping to do. Is there a chance? So you kind of, it's like the last last chance saloon, I suppose. If then that is not successful, you then go through clearing, and clearing is basically where the universities can say, okay, so we've had all these applications, these are the spaces we've got free. There's a free space if you want it for these courses. So you might kind of have to kind of go through lists and say, well, maybe not my first choice of university or my first choice of course, but it's enough which is interesting. I'd apply for that. I'd go for that position. So it's more a case of like, here's what's available, and you can kind of pick and choose which one you want to apply for that way. In response to this question, have you have heard that you can add a university after the early access deadline? Does that mean you can switch out a choice? Yeah, a good question. Again, one that's kind of popped up in the Q&A earlier. If you're not able to kind of say visit university before the internal deadlines we have, what we'd recommend is leave a space. So the person in the Q&A was thinking about maybe visiting Sheffield University, which is a great choice. What we'd say is, yeah, you can add a university if you've not already made 5 choices. But I don't think you can say, once you've sent it, I'm going to cancel that one and replace it with another. So it's got to be a case of you can fill a gap, but you can't necessarily make a gap, if that makes sense. Predicted grades, when are predicted grades decided upon? So predicted grades are basically something that, teachers are trying to do round about now. Hopefully, all the early apps ones are done. They're kind of like there, and essentially it's this period of time the teacher kind of get through their lists, and kind of add them in hopefully before the end of term. That's the idea. So it kind of gives the tutors a bit longer to kind of then create the rest of the teacher reference. So predicted grades should be there. They're at this stage usually kind of based on end of year 12 mock grades. So the things you've seen in the reports are often quite similar to predicted grades. It might be a case of, as Mrs. Bamber said, if the teacher feels they can do a bit better, and we do try to kind of give the best predicted grades we can based on evidence, we can, make the predictions in that way. If you get a predicted grade and it maybe isn't quite what you need for university application, what we recommend doing is going to speak to that member of staff. I've had this numerous times. I basically say, look, I've predicted you this grade because that's the work I've seen and it seems you're at that level. If you present to me a piece of work and I mark it, it's at the grade above, then, or at least kind of building towards the next grade above, then I'm usually quite happy to, increase the level. So predicted grades, they can be adjusted, but it's not just a case of going to a teacher and saying, oh, can you do me a favor and just boost this grade? Because, as Mr. Bamber said, the predicted grade is not a guarantee of that level. And it's in our interest to kind of like support the students by making sure they have predicted grades which are likely to be achieved, so the offers come back positive and achievable. So hopefully that answered that question. That's another one. Oh, great. Yeah. Sorry. Thank you, Ms. Bam, for covering that one. UCAS Extra. Lovely. Any more?
Please continue to add any questions into the meeting chat. Mr. Elson's going to start talking about the early apps process. It's really useful if you can all stay in the chat and hear this, because there is going to be some really valuable information about personal statements. Even if your son or daughter is not an early applicant, it does give some key advice. We've just had one question. Do we get to see the predicted grades, or are they given to the child? So teachers will put the predicted grades on to Unifrog. Then when we are putting references together, we can add those predicted grades, and the child will get a chance to see those. That's often when they say, this teacher said that they might predict me a grade higher, and then we'll have that conversation with the teachers just to make sure that the grade we are inputting is the one that the teachers have recommended. Can a student who does not want to apply to Oxbridge still follow the early app timelines? If you are willing to be as organized as you can be and get your personal statement written and you are sure about your choices, then the earlier you process your application, the earlier you can start to get offers. Often we wouldn't really advise that you do it before the early apps deadline. A lot of students have the impression that if they apply by the early app deadline, that all the other unis think that they're applying to Oxford or Cambridge, and that gives them an enhanced chance of an offer. So we would predominantly start to process everyone who is outside of Oxford and Cambridge after the early app deadline. But if they're ready to send as soon as possible after the early app deadline, then we will be available to help them with that.
Absolutely. Yeah, just to kind of answer that, it's a gamble some people play, thinking, oh, I'll send them with the early apps, so they think I've gone for Oxford, Cambridge, but it doesn't really make a difference. The universities kind of deal with them the exact same way. The only consideration, I suppose, is there'll probably be like a smaller pile of applications on their desks, so they might have a little bit more time to look through them. But again, it's not necessarily like a great advantage sending it early. It's just a case of like helping out your organization. Right, so switching to the early app side of things, again, feel free for all of you to kind of carry on watching. So the information I'm giving is going to be as brief and kind of like thorough, but brief as possible. It's essentially kind of information that's going to be relevant for everyone. It's just early apps will need it a bit sooner because there's more of a more looming deadline, I suppose. So I'm just going to share my screen. If I go to that one, and lovely. Mrs. Bamber, can you see the screen as it is?
I can indeed.
Lovely, fantastic. Okay, I've gone a bit fancy with my presentation, but like
Much
I said,
fancier than my presentation.
hey, your presentation was absolutely lovely. So in terms of competitive applications, again, if you're applying for any course at Oxford, Cambridge, or if you're thinking about applying for medicine, to be a vet, to be a dentist, or for the conservatoire course, like studying music, basically all these are examples of early apps or competitive applications. So just up, a more challenging kind of like access route in. So to get us started, this is what we've been looking into so far, in terms of helping for the early apps. So we've had our weekly early apps meetings. I've gone through lots of information, and I think just about all the information I've given is like, able to be found on Teams, which I'll show you as we go through. We've done a couple of visits. So we've been to Oxford. A group of people, I went to Oxford to kind of have a look, wander around, see what life is like there. Oxford also came to Churchdown, so we kind of went for a bit of a session there. And then in terms of the other major aspect of the year is me wanging on about the supercurricular and how is the supercurricular different to the extracurricular. So essentially, supercurricular is all the things you do outside of the school. Hopefully, you've all been able to report or heard the reports back from your kids about what the supercurricular is. They should know by now, but just in case, it's things which aren't provided by the school. It's things that they've done, whether it's kind of reading books that they just have an interest in, which links to the things they want to study. Whether it could be like listening to podcasts, it could be watching documentaries, it could be kind of like going on visits which they funded for themselves. Basically, kind of things they've done off their own steam, under their own initiative. That's what the supercurricular is. So in terms of our to-do list, again, especially for the early appers, but again, this is the case for just about everyone, although admissions tests will probably not be as important. The personal statement really is quite key. So I said here, like, utilize the last few days of term. So obviously, year 12s are often their, work experience. What I've been encouraging is people to, if you're applying for early apps, I mean, as you've seen, the internal deadline is the 15th of September. So it's going to feel basically as soon as you're back at school, you're having to kind of like make sure this personal statement's not just kind of like drafted, but ready to go and in. So I've been kind of like prodding the group for quite a while, saying, feel free to get your drafts into me, especially this end point of the term when, I don't have the year 13s to teach or the year 11s to teach because they've done their exams. That's the thing, like, next year, year 13, and feel free to kind of relay this back to your students, to your children. And I'm sure you'll know this as well. Like, time goes faster, doesn't it? Like, time is just accelerated by the time you get to, A levels and sixth form. And it just doesn't really slow down. So, although we've got this long looming summer ahead, it'll be gone, gone, finished, done. And then suddenly it's September, and then 2 weeks back, you're then thinking, right, have I got all my stuff ready to go? So the personal statement, get drafting, utilize the last few days of term, if they can, get an email to me saying, also, is it okay to look through this? Absolutely fine. I've got a few in my inbox at the moment, which I need to get back to people. But again, it's gives you that little bit of extra window. Um, in terms of admissions tests, it's down to the individuals themselves to kind of think, right, do I need admissions test for this? So it's very easy to find out if you're studying something like, medicine, dentistry, veterinary science, you'll have to do the UCAT. But admissions tests, you can apply for them. It's entirely outside of school. I've got some details a little bit later about how to kind of get to them, but it's very straightforward. And there's also an early apps kind of, applications booklet that we've got for you, which has lots and lots of like links to click essentially to kind of like direct you to different places. It's meant to be as kind of concise and like, here's where this information is found, here's where you can find this information. So with admissions tests, registration for all the tests, whether it's for the LNAP for law, whether it's there's all sorts of different tests. They've tried to kind of standardize them a little bit more this year. So Cambridge and UCL do similar tests. Oxford does its own admissions tests. And it's basically a case of like looking into your course and, often going onto university websites and saying, entrance requirements, do you need an admissions test? Some courses, yes, some no. In places like Oxford and Cambridge, some colleges will expect you to do admissions tests, others won't. So it's just a case of making sure you check for yourself. Any issues with that, feel free to come and get them to find me and double check. But it is quite straightforward information to find. It's just a case of, like go onto their website and see, is an admissions test required? Super curricular, keep it going, listen to personal statements. So essentially, yeah, the personal statements need to have, again, if you're thinking early applications and competitive courses, it basically needs to be pretty much 100% academic. So it's thinking about kind of the skills you've picked up, like the journey of your interest in that subject. So the thing they don't want to see is like, oh, since my first memories, I've always wished to be, an engineer, a doctor, or a dentist, whatever it is, because they see through that and they know they get that a lot and they think, well, yeah, but what have you done to support it? That's what we're looking for. So one of the best things to kind of have is an example of, I first found this course or this subject or this career interesting by, reading this or seeing this happen. And then in order to explore this further and to find out more, I then, watched this documentary, like attended this lecture, or basically tried to get some work experience. And then as a result of that, I've learned these things and these skills allow me to kind of focus on these things, or I did this kind of activity to develop these skills. So you're almost building like a journey, saying that I started here and then through my own steam, I then got here and then I took it to here and I'm now looking to go on to this next level. That's really what they want to see in the personal statement. A few cases of kind of, again, applying your own initiative and showing that you can build up these skills for yourself. In terms of format changes, as you said, as Miss Bamber's covered, it's basically the same process, just split into kind of three sections, these three questions to answer. They read all the information, it's one person reading the personal statement. It's not like, the first question goes to one person, second question to another. So if it's on the personal statement, it gets read. It doesn't matter too much about which bit of information is in which answer. Sometimes it cross over. One section might be considerably bigger than another. All of that is absolutely fine. Again, there's guidance on that, which they can find. So, if they turn around and say, but I don't know what I'm doing, I can't start now. Yeah, they do. They might just need to be kind of reminded, remember all those things that Mr. Elson was saying, or what about all these bits and pieces you've done? It's all grand. They know more than they think they do. The worst part about the personal statement by a country mile is starting it, because it is essentially an advert for, here's what I've done that makes me stand out. It's kind of the one time you kind of encourage them to be a little bit arrogant, kind of saying, this is why I'm a catch, this is why I'm the student that you want. So bingo. A recap of the guidance and bits and pieces of where you can find it. It does need to be structured. It does need to be kind of concise. The main thing I say to students when I kind of see their drafts is, don't use 10 words to say what you could say in 5. Cut out the waffle. It's sometimes quite difficult for them to see what is waffle. So please feel free to kind of put your best kind of like parental, waffleometers on and just kind of say, right, this bit cut. You're saying like this in these 3 sentences. Can you just say that in 1 sentence? And that's basically how to then leave room for, I then did this, and this taught me these skills, and these skills are applicable because, and that's the bit they like. So in terms of like keeping that record, again, as Miss Bamber alluded to about, your super curriculars, make sure you've got that list of things you can say, so here's what I've done, here's how it builds towards, here's how I've kind of prepared myself further. They don't want them to be the finished article. They just want to see that they can learn, they can develop, they can apply their skills. So they don't want a list as well. It's a case of like kind of, I started here, I got here, and this is what I've got here. They don't necessarily just want to say, I've done this, I've done this, I've done this, I've done this, because they want to see that you can think. So especially the case for the competitive courses, to a lesser extent, I suppose, for the others, but the same sort of process. Grand. So in terms of where to find all this guidance, this is where you can find it on Teams. So this is now actually called Sixth Form Notice Board rather than Year 12 2024. That's a change we've made just after I made this. So you can see it all says a few seconds ago. It's been in place a little bit longer now. But yes, if you go to Sixth Form Notice Board Teams, there's a little folder for university personal statements and personal statement guidance. So in the general channel, click files, and then university personal statements, personal statement guidance. And there's loads, there's copies of, personal statements which have been successful for competitive courses, in terms of at least getting an interview. There's a building guide, which is a little bit different to, the Unifrog one. There's an explanation of the UCAS personal statement changes. Cambridge webinar, which I've typed up about, what the new formats mean and how to apply it. So basically plenty of information if you need it. Again, just knowing it's there is usually kind of really handy. My baby's just come home, so I'm just going to shut the door. So yeah, provide all this guidance, worth reading. And yeah, so that's where you can find it, as I've just kind of shown you. And again, this will be recorded and you can kind of skip to this point and find out where it is again if you need to. But again, it's in Teams. It's designed to be relatively easy to find, but fingers crossed, it's sometimes a bit trickier, so I understand. So yes, it sounds like a lot of information. I know we've given you a lot of information tonight already, so apologies, but it's trying to kind of just make it concise and help all link together. Again, the worst part of the personal statement is starting it, and then once you've got something in place, it's much easier to then whittle it down. And then yeah, start drafting. It's absolutely fine if it's your third, fourth version, which is the one you actually send off. Some people do a lot more versions than that, which is fine, but again, the people tend to need fewer drafts are the one who've kind of taken most stock of the guidance. So yeah, as I said, show it a trail of interest, I suppose, like kind of that building that connected journey, where you started, where you've gone next, where you are now, rather than just providing a list. And again, the sooner they come to me, the sooner I can get back to you and get you started on your second draft. So that's all things personal statements. Admissions tests I've mentioned as well. So we've got this document, which I'll go back to in a moment, but you can also see again on our Teams, again, sixth form notice board rather than Year 12 now. But if you go to documents, early applicants, I've got a whole host of information, basically kind of providing information about admissions tests for competitive courses. It's more likely you'll need an admissions test. So there's a whole folder on admissions test information there, super curricular resources. There's also the competitive applications entry booklet, which is what this is. And basically this is really handy. This space kind of constructed mostly of links, like information about this, you can find it here, information about this, you can find it here. I've tried to keep it as few pages as possible. Yes, so essentially all the stuff about admissions tests, all this information is kind of in this document in a bit more depth. And again, just so you can see it, you can find it in the the sixth form notice boards team. Again, if you go to early applicants, click that main channel link and then press files, probably go to post first, click files, and then you can find that booklet just down here. So lots of information there. You're free to kind of look at all these bits and pieces. Presentations for previous students about going to particular universities, personal statement guidance, same as the other one, gap year info, interview info. So yeah, hopefully just kind of enough information to kind of keep you ticking over. Interviews, great. So this is the other thing that kind of separates competitive courses from others. Lots of people will be offered interviews. They have, like, Oxford and Cambridge have slightly different approaches to them. Cambridge tend to interview people a lot more than Oxford do, but they are viewed as just as crucial as personal statements and references in both cases. And in fact, also for, like, other competitive courses, it's not just you've got a good personal statement, we want you. It's a case of, like, the reference good? Are your predicted grades good? Is your entrance test good? Is your interview good? They take the whole package. So all these bits and pieces of information are important. So interviews are going to be, I suppose in many cases it's the bit which is most tricky to help with, because that's the bit that the students really do kind of on their own. So what we can do is organise practice interviews, mock interviews, and we actually work with some other schools like Churchland and Cripps to try and provide more unfamiliar teaching staff to provide these mock interviews to give it that little bit more gravitas. So again, once you've sent off your application, you'll hear back relatively soon afterwards saying, like, yeah, fantastic, we'd like to offer you this interview. So as soon as that offer comes through for an interview, please let us know, and then we can give you the best chance possible to kind of get some mock interviews in place. If you're relatively certain that you'll get if you'll need an interview, then again, the sooner you come to us to kind of say, this is the course I'm going for, I think I'll need an interview. So, dentist, most courses, basically, if you're applying for competitive applications, it's worth kind of getting a practice interview in anyway. But those are also interview practice like that you can also do with anyone at home, aunts, uncles, brothers, sisters who need to be parents, definitely. Next door neighbours if you get on well with them. Just give them a little bit of the grilling. Again, same thing with the interviews, especially for the competitive courses at Oxford and Cambridge. They're not looking for always the right answer. In fact, they often don't want the correct answer. It's more a case of the interviews are deliberately hard because they're testing how individuals think. They want to ask some questions which they don't know the answer to, because they want them to kind of think their way through a problem. How would they approach one? Like, how would they kind of go from one thing to another? So the best thing to kind of get them to do, and it does take practice and it does feel weird to do, but if you're kind of posed a question which you just don't know the answer to, try and think out loud. So, instead of thinking, more a case of, well, I don't really know how I'd start. So I suppose I could apply it from this approach, and then, you know, that sort of speaking aloud gives them things they can potentially kind of jump in on, say, oh, so we heard you saying that. Why would you have done that? And then gets the flow going a bit better. So yeah, interviews kind of, until you're actually at them, they can seem a bit scary, but actually people come away from often saying, actually, I really enjoyed it, because the people giving them the interview will be people who are really interested in that topic, in that subject, in that course, in that career. And so it's basically, again, for Oxford and Cambridge especially, they want it to be like a nerdy conversation, like, oh, we understand you're really interested in our subject. Like, what bits you're interested in? Like, tell me what you know. Like, how kind of up to date with things are you? Let's see where we can go with this. So that's the approach for them, really. Right. Yes. So crucial next few days and weeks. Next terms, I've said, very, very busy. Get prepared now. And in terms of some key deadlines, so yes, registering, booking admissions tests, making sure you've got that. So you can register now, make sure the booking stage is done. If they require access arrangements, it's going to be by the 8th of September. So again, it's one of those dates that comes up very, very quickly. It's worth, having a finger on the pulse, knowing that they've got to get it done by that stage. If you're applying for medicine, you need to do the UCAS. It'll be the 9th of September is the deadline. For others, it's, after September's the deadline, which also brings to another question that came up in the Q&A. If you are applying for something like medicine or law or whatever, and the admissions test is after the deadline for submitting your application, that's absolutely fine. The test centres will kind of send the results to the universities, basically like through UCAS directly. So you don't need to refer to the score you got on your UCAS form. That'll just be information that's available to the universities. So you can still apply before even sitting the test. That's absolutely fine. I think that is the end of my little presentation there.
Another thing with personal statements, if students are popping in there that they have read a particular book or something like that, be prepared that if they do have an interview, that may be something they're asked. So do not put anything in your personal statement that you are not absolutely 100% happy to talk about in an interview situation. Equally, they do like it if you there's books that maybe all medics would read or all dentists would read. If you can do something that's a little bit more individual and personalized and a little bit more out there, it always just gives you that little bit of a competitive edge.
Yeah,
We
absolutely.
have had a few questions which I think I have answered on the chat.
Yeah, I saw the one about AI. There's actually some guidance from like institutions like Oxford and Cambridge. So the guidance in the personal statement builders that I showed you through the Teams link, you can see it on there. But basically, what they say is, in both cases, look, we realize we live in a world where AI is a thing, and we realize that a lot of students, basically in many cases, know how to use AI better than the people they send their applications off to. They also know how to detect it. So what they say is, no matter how good your AI skills are, no one's going to be able to kind of like get across you better than you yourself. What they say is you can use AI to kind of, talk you about structure and kind of like put it together better, but it's going to be down to the individual to kind of, feed it the correct information. Don't get AI to write it from scratch. Basically, going to say, right, here's what I've kind of put together. AI can help me to structure it better and make it more concise, perhaps. They're absolutely fine with that. It's just they just want the individual to kind of write the personal statement as much themselves as possible. You can use AI as a tool rather than the author.
And then we had another question: can students send their personal statements during the holidays? Yeah, of course you can. Send your personal statements whenever they are ready. As I have said, you may not get a response straight away. So please rest assured that we will aim to at least respond to your email to say, look, it's in hand, we've received it, but please don't expect a response straight away, but we will get back to you as soon as we possibly can. Different staff members have different working patterns, which I'm sure you can appreciate, but we will make sure that we respond as soon as we possibly can. Final few minutes for any questions, and if nobody has any questions, we will end the event. So we'll just give a few minutes for any last questions.
No problem.
Okay. This will be available if you would like to sort of listen to it again, and we will make sure that both presentations are popped on Teams for the students to access, and we will also email it out to you hopefully tomorrow at some point.
Yeah.
And feel free, you've got our email addresses. If there's anything that you sort of think tonight that you haven't asked or you've forgotten about, please do make sure that you can email us at any point. And I really hope that all of your work experiences are going well. And I look forward to hearing all about it.
Absolutely. And yeah, sorry, I know that's a whole lot of information tonight to take in. Yeah, hopefully it just helps out a bit.
And as I said, there will be another Parents Information Evening in September to talk about all of the other aspects of Year 13. We just didn't want to put both together because it's sort of information overload. And if you feel overwhelmed by the amount of information, think how the students feel.
Think of the students, friend. Anyways, thank you very much for your nice comments, everyone. Have a lovely evening.
Thank you very much. Bye.